Okay. Now, after this, of course, Cassius and Brutus flee Rome, and Antony, Octavius, and Lepidus set up a triumvirate. They are ruling together, and they are going to fight against Cassius and Brutus. And during this whole time, they're pretty much in agreement, except that Antony's not really thrilled with Lepidus being a ruler, but he goes along with it. Meanwhile, Cassius and Brutus are having some problems because Brutus is a very honest man. He gets very angry with Cassius because Cassius seems to feel that taking bribes is an okay thing to do. And Cassius wanted him to spare one of his men who were taking bribes, and Brutus would not do it. And in fact, Brutus then started accusing Cassius of taking bribes himself, which was true. But Brutus probably wouldn't have gotten so emotional and upset and had these arguments with Cassius if he were not already upset about having heard that his wife Portia had committed suicide by swallowing hot coals. They said in the play that she swallowed fire, but we would say that she killed herself by swallowing hot coals. All right, after Cassius and Brutus kind of make up, Cassius leaves. Brutus is lying down. He wants to read a book and then go to sleep. And he's got some of his men standing watch or, being in his room at the same time so that in case someone would try to assassinate him, he would have help. And while he's lying in bed, he sees a ghost. The play calls this the ghost of Caesar. And the ghost of Caesar says to Brutus, "I will see you again in Philippi." And Philippi is where they're going to march the next day to meet with Octavius, Antony, and Lepidus to have their battle. Okay. And that again was something that Brutus and Cassius had not agreed upon initially. Brutus wanted to travel to Philippi to have the battle. Cassius wanted to stay in Sardis, but again Cassius gave in to Brutus's wishes. The day of the battle, Cassius and Brutus are speaking to each other, and before they leave to go to their own armies to start this battle, they promise each other that if they see each other again after this battle, it will be because they were victorious. Because they promise each other that if they're not victorious, they will kill themselves rather than become prisoners. Because when you're a prisoner, you're paraded through Rome, and they don't want that to happen to themselves. So they really decide that they either win and continue to live, or they lose and commit suicide if they're not killed in battle. Okay, during the battle, there's a misunderstanding. Cassius thinks that his best friend, Titinius, has been captured by Antony's army. It's reported that Titinius goes down into the camp, and he's surrounded by all these soldiers, and they tear him from his horse, and the person who's watching this tells Cassius that Titinius has been attacked and ripped from his horse and killed. And in fact, what it was is Titinius rides down, there's Brutus's men, they are all happy to see him, so they're yelling their greetings, and they pull him down from his horse. They help him get down from his horse because they want to greet him and welcome him. Well, Cassius doesn't understand this. He thinks that his friend has been captured by Antony's men, and maybe even Brutus's forces have been captured by Antony's men. So he forces his servant to stab him. And that's how Cassius dies. Instead of Cassius stabbing himself, he makes his slave, basically, stab him. And the slave has no choice. He has to do what his master tells him. So he stabs Casius, and Casius then dies. All right, then eventually Brutus sees that the battle's lost. He finds Casius is dead, and he himself knows that he's going to end up being captured, so he wants to also wants to die. And he asks a couple of his men if they will kill him or hold the sword for him, and they refuse. But finally Strato agrees to hold the sword and Brutus will run on it. Now he doesn't like run across the land and throw himself on the sword. They say run on your sword. Basically what they mean is that he held Strato's shoulders like this, and then he pulled himself into his sword, into the sword that Strato was holding, and that's how he died. All right, after Antony and Octavius and everyone find Brutus's body, Antony feels bad about Brutus dying because he knows that Brutus really did this out of what he thought was best for Rome, and his fear of Caesar becoming a tyrant. So he calls Brutus the noblest Roman of them all. Okay, now whenever we read something, we talk about themes, and most pieces of literature have some sort of theme. And this one could have a lot to do with political themes, really knowing people for what they are, and thinking ahead as to the results of one's actions. This is considered a tragedy because there's a tragic hero who has a tragic flaw. That means something about his character causes him to have a downfall. And a tragedy also has to have a catharsis, which we won't really go into that a lot. But if you think about it, the downfall of Caesar, what characteristics did Caesar have that caused him to be basically ruined? To not see what was going on around him, or not realize that what he was doing was going to cause problems. And that's something that you have to think about. What kind of character flaws did he have? Then, if you think about Brutus and Casius, what contributed to their downfall? What about Brutus and Casius caused them to fail in the end? And that's something you'll need to think about before the test. Now, there were different quotations that you had on your quotation pages. There were also other quotations that I'm going to have on the test. What you need to do in order to figure out what these quotations mean, who said them, etc., is read the quotation carefully. Think about the story. Who might have said this? Why did that person say it? And what exactly does it mean? These will take you some time. Do not rush through them. And don't just choose the first choice that seems about right. You need to pick out the best choice out of the 4 or 5 that you're given. It will give you the quotation, and it'll say, what do these lines mean? So you need to read it, interpret what they mean, and then choose the correct answer. And there are a few of those. So those, really take a lot of time on those, otherwise you may miss them. Okay, I think I've covered as much as I can. Go ahead and look at some of the Jeopardy, and also the practice tests and quizzes that I've put links for on my website. And I hope you do well on the test.